Hey guys, Matt here. Tonight we're gonna go more in depth into deloading, what a deload is, why you should deload, how to deload, and who should deload. So deloading is simply a planned break from training. It's not a week off. I rarely like to take an entire week where I don't go into the gym at all. Consider that a deload, but I don't usually recommend it. I like to still get into the gym. I like to keep the habit going. I like to take my muscles through those ranges of motion. I like to stimulate just a little bit. I like to get some good stretching in when I'm doing my deload weeks. It keeps me going, and then when I come back in the next week, I feel much more ready to attack the weights that I want to be going at, and I don't get nearly as sore. You've probably been there. You take a week off from training, you come back in, you do same style of workout that you're used to doing, and you just get absolutely hammered. Deloads can help prevent that. You're probably gonna get more sore than normal after a deload, but not as bad as if you take an entire week off. So it's simply a planned, lighter week of training in order to give our bodies, our brains, even our nervous system and our endocrine systems a rest. So if you're training intelligently, you're training hard, you're taking your sets close to failure, you're getting in that 10 to 20 recommended sets worth of volume. Those are all working sets, close to failure, maybe even beyond failure. We're getting a lot of good stimulation, but we're also doing some damage that from time to time we want to take a break from. If you think about your body like a race car, you can push it hard, but at some point you're going to have to take a pit stop. Otherwise your performance is going to start to come down, and you're going to start breaking things. So it's nice to give your body a little bit of a break. Feel like you're mentally more ready to come back into the gym. Give not just your muscles and your joints, but one that we don't talk about a lot, just our endocrine system. So all of the hormones that we're counting on in order to help drive the adaptations that we want. So testosterone and insulin-like growth factor, and even out of our adrenal cortex. So epinephrine and norepinephrine, chemicals and signals and hormones that are gonna help us be strong when we come into the gym. Those take a pretty good beating week in and week out when we're training really hard. And when we're training hard, we get a lot of cortisol, a stress hormone that you've probably heard about. And cortisol, acutely, the cortisol that we get from training is a good thing. It mobilizes blood sugar. It is catabolic, so it will shut down muscle protein synthesis, and it will break down proteins, some of which it will turn into carbohydrates and then into blood sugar so that we can use them for training. But that's not even a bad thing. That can actually help us in the recovery process. When we're building new muscle, we're bringing new amino acids in, and we're building the proteins that we want. It's okay to break down some of those older proteins and then replenish. So it's a good thing, but it also, every time that we get a cortisol dump, we're also going to get an adrenaline dump, which again, when we're in the gym, that's a good thing. That's that fight or flight stimulant, right? That's going to make us ready to go. That's going to help us be strong. But over time, we can desensitize to that, so it doesn't have the same effect that it had before. And if we're training hard, we're training a lot, we're constantly putting our bodies in those high stress states, eventually even our endocrine system, everything needs a break. Our minds need a break. So those are some of the reasons why we want to take a deload. So here are some signs you might notice that will tell you that it's time to probably take a break from training. If you're noticing lingering joint pain, sticking around anywhere, probably a good idea to take a break. If you're not progressing in the gym, so if you're noticing that we can have a bad workout or a bad set or a bad exercise at any given time, but if you go through a couple of weeks and you're not progressing the way that you feel like you should, or something's not getting better in the gym, maybe you didn't add weight, maybe you didn't add reps, but maybe last week was a 1 RAR and this week it's a 2 RAR. You figure you could get 2 reps out of that exercise this time around. Or you just feel much more in control of that weight this week than you did last week. Something should be improving pretty much every exercise when you come into the gym. So if you're not, that might be a sign that it's time to take a break. If you're dreading coming into the gym, if mentally you are just not wanting to go in, again, you don't have to want to come into the gym every single night. You don't have to feel like you're absolutely ready to crush your workouts, but you should still want to go in, or should still feel like, yep, time to go. I'm ready. I feel good. So if you're starting to really not want to be in here, that's a good sign that it's probably time to take a break. And a last one to really pay attention to is if you're not healing on time like you normally do. So if you train, say, your chest on Mondays and Thursdays, and usually by the time you hit Wednesday night and then into Thursday, as you're not sore anymore, you feel ready to go, you feel strong, you feel like you can go. But if all of a sudden you're noticing that, man, Thursday's back, and I didn't do a whole lot more on Monday than what I'm used to, and I'm just not ready to go, that could be a sign that you're not recovering as well as you should. And so maybe even some of your endocrine system and your nervous system, maybe even those are starting to tell you that it's time to take a break. So those are some good times or some good signals to pay attention to that it might be time to do that. If you're a beginner, it's a little bit different for you. If you are just starting in the gym, you're just getting into this, you probably don't need to plan your deloads out. Just run your progressions. Follow a good double progression model. If you hit 2 weeks in a row where you're not able to add weight or reps, drop your weight by 10%, hit your reps, then come back in the next week, and that's probably all the real deload for that exercise that you needed. Come back in and you're probably fine, and then just continue. So for beginners, this is a little bit different. Once you get to that intermediate or even into the advanced stages, now it's time to start to plan those out. So I like to plan these out every 4 to 8 weeks. So build a 4-week mesocycle. At the end of the 4 weeks, how are you feeling? Are you starting to notice any of the things that I just talked about? Any lingering soreness, you're not progressing the way that you wanted to, you're not feeling like you want to come into the gym, or maybe even you just want to switch up your exercises. Then at 4 weeks, it's a good time to take your deload. If at 4 weeks you feel great, you're loving your exercises, your workouts feel great, you're progressing really well, you're in and you're ready to go, everything feels good, then keep going. Go for another week. So hit week 5, week 6, week 7, maybe even week 8. But at the end of each week, just kind of pay attention to how you're feeling and see if it's time to take a deload. I don't ever recommend going more than 12. If you've gone through 3 4-week mesocycles, even if each of those mesocycles was the same one, you just continued straight on for 12 weeks. At the end of 12 weeks, take a planned deload and give your body a rest. I'm pretty typical about every 5, maybe 6 weeks, I'll run my mesocycle for that long, and then it's time. I'm either ready to change things up or I'm not progressing on a lift the way that I want to, and it's time to take my deload. All right, how to deload. So first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna cut your volume in half. So if you're usually doing, for your last mesocycle, you were doing 12 sets of quads, we're gonna cut that down to 6. So maybe that was a Monday, Thursday was your leg nights. And so each night you were doing 6 sets of quads, you're just gonna cut that down to 3 sets of quads for that night. So cut your volume in half. The next thing, cut either your weight or your reps, but typically not both. So if this is just, I feel like it's time to take a deload and then I'm gonna start a new mesocycle, just cut one or the other. So let's say you did 4 sets of squats at 225 for 10 reps. We're gonna cut the volume in half, so we're gonna cut that down to 2 sets of squats. Then maybe stay at 225, but go for 5 reps. So cut the reps in half, but leave the weight the same. Or you could drop those down to 2 sets, stay at your 10 reps, but cut the weight down to 135. So cut the weight way back. So choose one, cut the reps in half, or cut the weight roughly in half, and along with the volume in half. I will typically leave my more compound, heavy exercises at the weight that I've been training at, because for me, I notice that I tend to lose my strength the most. So if I've been squatting at 225 and I cut that down to 135, when I come back in the next week, if I'm going to squat again, 225 is going to feel like 315. So I prefer to keep my body feeling the weight, and then I'll just cut the reps way back. And then on my higher rep sets or isolated movements, I'll leave the reps high on those and I'll cut the weight back, because since the reps are a lot higher, I'll be able to handle the weights again the next time around. So personally for me, that's how I usually do it. So normal deload, cut your volume in half, and then choose one or the other for each exercise and cut either the weight in half or cut the reps in half. This is really easy if you've done an even number of sets. So if you did 6 sets of chest and you're gonna cut that down to 3, that's a nice easy number. If you did an odd number of sets, say you did 3 sets of barbell bicep curls, I round that down. So do 1 set of barbell bicep curls the next time in. And that's gonna feel like absolutely nothing, right? I'd say one set of half the weight is gonna feel like nothing. But remember, our purpose during this week is to give our bodies a really good rest, take the joints through a full range of motion, get some good stretches in there, and resensitize the muscles to the training stimulus. So err on the side of less than more. Now, on the other side of things, if you feel like you absolutely have to take a deload, so if you are not wanting to come into the gym at all, you're sore everywhere, you're not progressing, you're not recovering on time, likely you went way too long without taking a deload and you just absolutely have to. If you're in that position right now, cut everything in half. Cut your volume in half, cut the weight in half, cut the reps in half. So all of a sudden now you were doing 4 sets of squats at 225 for 10 reps, and now you're gonna do 2 sets of squats at 135 for 5 reps. Again, it's gonna feel like nothing, but by the time you get to the end of that week, you should feel much better. You should feel like you're ready to come back into the gym after a week of that. You'll probably come back in when you've trained a week like that with that low of a training stimulus and that low of volume. You will probably come back in and be weaker than normal and get more sore than normal, and that's okay. So come back in, plan on that. When you come back into the next mesocycle, instead of jumping right back to the volume that you're used to handling, bring that back to 3/4 of the volume. So if you were gonna do 12 sets of quads, maybe come back at 9 sets of quads for that week, and then build yourself back in. So if you got to a point where you probably went too long without a deload, you really hammered your body and you really need it, drop everything way back and then slowly ramp yourself back into it. But if you've gone 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you're gonna take a planned deload, you're gonna take a light week of training, and then you're gonna come back in, you probably don't need to worry about that. Most of the time, if I take a deload every 4 to 6 weeks, I can jump right back in pretty much at the weights that I wanna be training at, and I'll be able to hit my volume targets and maybe even ramp my volume back up. So that should do it. That's how to deload, why to deload. If you're not used to taking those deloads, throw one in. If you've been training for a long period of time now and you haven't done this, throw a deload in there. Come down, let me know how that worked. If you've got any more questions about it, or if there's anything in here that I didn't cover, let me know and I'll answer you back. Have a good workout.